We are riders, we are using the bikes.
I think like what a lot of people don't realize is that you see this finished end product of a bike, but you don't know all these little elements, all the little different teams to make sure that that bike is stiff, strong, and obviously be as light as possible.
I mean, doing such a bike is like in between like 2 and 3 years for us.
Here it is, the brand new Scott Genius. This is my custom build that I've literally just finished. I've ridden around the car park, it feels really good, it's yet to hit a trail. And before we do that, I actually want to sit down with one of the engineers who worked on designing this bike to find out a little bit more. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Etienne. Okay, Etienne, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I'm supposed to be like behind my laptop right now.
Wanted to talk a little bit more about the Genius because I've just built mine, it looks absolutely incredible, but I actually did an engineering degree at university, and you're an engineer, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about the process and what went into it. So first of all, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Etienne. I'm working for like Scott Sports, and I'm part of the mountain bike engineering team. And I've been like one of the engineers who worked on this new Genius platform.
Let's talk a little bit about that redesign of the Genius. And first of all, just give us an overview of the bike. Like
compared to the previous bike, we applied the like integrated technology we have. That you have seen on the Spark already last year. So it's still a 4-bar linkage, unlike the Spark actually was a flex pivot, but like with like a very different construction. Like we try to put like the shock like as low as possible in the frame, and like the only way to put it like lower than the previous generation was to put it like inside the frame. And from an engineering point of view, what does it actually mean having that shock low inside the frame? We all know like low center of gravity is better for like handling characteristic. The shock is like protected from the elements. We have like few advantage of having the shock inside. Like, what goes into the actual design process of being able to create the shock inside the frame? For example, how to disassemble the shock, to keep it like as easy as possible, the access to the different like knobs to tune your shock, how to set the sag. Like it's like new challenges, let's say, that we had to solve, and I think we managed to do something pretty great on this. One of the advantages of having like the trunnion mount like that low in the frame, it's like it's close to the baby, where the frame is already quite wide. So it's really good for the stiffness and the frame constriction to have like pretty much like everything aligned in this area. And is the shock actually part of the construction of the bike? Does it help with performance and stiffness of the chassis? Yeah, it is. I mean, by putting the shock like as low as possible in the frame and as close as possible to the baby, like it's helping a lot for the stiffness, for like the frame constriction, because like everything is pretty much in the same area, so we can put like the extra weight and stiffness, like as I said before, like quite low in the frame and in the same area. Well, we've got a carbon cutout right here, which if I just grab and we take a look at that, I mean, you can see the shock obviously. The shock sits in there, and you can see how big an entry port you have for actually being able to adjust it, be able to fit the shock. Why don't you just talk us through a little bit about the chassis, and you know, it's completely redesigned. I mean, how thick that tubing is, how thin it is up here. It looks incredible. Yeah, it is. Can you tell me a little bit about the engineering point of view and what went into it and why the frame shape is the shape it is? I really like this cut frame because you can see on one side like how simple it looks, and on the other side like how technical it has to be to look this way. It's almost a bit frustrating sometimes for me, like as an engineer, because like the frame is looking like so simple, and we have to put, as you can see inside, like we have to put like a lot of thoughts and efforts to make it work like this. So regarding like the shape of the tube, we applied like the like the stiffness and lightweight zone. So like this is like the stiffness zone at the bottom of the bike, where we have like all the beefed up section. To have like the good characteristic like for like pedaling or riding down, like the good like fork and BB stiffness, bottom bracket stiffness. And at the top, where we don't need like so much material, we try to keep it like really light. And once again, it's working with like having all the weight like quite low at the bottom of the frame. What other sort of things have gone into designing the frame? You know, I can see already that compared to the old Genius, there are much bigger bearings here. It's for stiffness, durability, everything. Like we completely changed the design of the Link compared to the Spark. So we were able to put like those massive bearings in there. We have like double bearing on each side, so we have like 2 bearings on each side to help with the stiffness at the back and the durability. So. And that's on the rear pivot here, isn't it? Exactly. This bike is a bit more aggressive in terms of geometry and capabilities. We wanted to keep something which is as good as a pedaling platform as the previous one, which was like super good for this, but to extend a bit downhill capabilities. So it was important that the construction as well is following what the bike is designed for.
And it's stayed true to having 150 millimeters of travel, hasn't it, on the rear?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, from a rider's point of view,
Yeah.
let's talk about the suspension characteristics.
Yeah.
What are they going to be expecting when they're out on the trails?
So I think we had a really good base with the kinematic of the previous Genius, but we managed to improve it like there and there. So compared to the old one, this one is like more progressive, actually. The anti-squat is a bit higher, so like the bike, even without the twin lock, is not really bobbing when you pedal up. And otherwise, we managed to keep like all the good points we had from the Genius and improve the one we thought we could still improve.
And in terms of small bump sensitivity, what's it like? And also at the other end, what's the progressivity of the shock?
The shock is like slightly more progressive. The small bump sensitivity is improved because of like the higher progressivity of the bike. And we also improve like the bottom out resistance. And we work like closely with Fox on this project. So we have like, this bike will be spec'd with like two new shock for us.
Let's grab that new shock and we can actually we can talk a little bit more about that. I built my bike with the new Fox Float X nude shock.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it. You've got one in your hand, and I'm gonna pick this one up here that has been cut out into the section, and just, it looks incredible. The engineering that has gone into that is
It's quite cool.
It's really cool, yeah, really, really cool. So first of all, what's different? What's changed?
So that's something new for this year. So the Genius will be available in two specs. We will have the classic Genius with like a Nude 5T, which is also a new shock from Fox. And we'll have like a more aggressive version, which is like the ST, the Super Trail. And this one will come with like other changes, with like this new shock, which is like the Fox Floatix Nude. So it's still a nude shock. So it's like the nude technology we managed to create like many years ago with Fox. And like we work like really closely with them in order to achieve this. So it's a piggyback shock, so it's made for like more aggressive like trail riding. You have like bigger air volume, which is easy to tune exactly according to the way you want the shock to perform. You can see like you have like two blue volume spacer in this one. We have like a lot of different volume spacer available. So yeah, more adjustability to suit like everyone's preferences. So we have like low speed compression and low speed rebound as well. You can see on this one like the bottom out bumper, which is like super efficient actually, I have to say. And we managed to have like all this and keep like our new technology. So this is something which is like really like specific to Scott. And so we keep like the three modes of the new technology. So we still have like a pedaling platform, which is closing up the second air chamber you can see here. So the first one is like closing a valve here. So the air can only stay in this first air chamber and not go into the second one.
And in theory, you could also ride a little bit of downhill on that as well. If you wanted some extra support, or you know, if you're in the bike park, it might be a really useful feature for some riders.
Yeah, exactly, it is. Just one click with the track lock lever, and yeah, you will increase the progressivity quite a lot. It's kind of similar as if you fill the second air chamber with spacer. And when you go to the second one, the second air chamber remains closed, and then we close the compression as well. So it means that in the first mode, which is like the pedaling mode, the hydraulic is still working, unlike a lockout on a classic lockout shock. The suspension is still working with the hydraulic, but the bike is sitting a bit higher in the travel because like you increase the progressivity quite a lot. So the bike is a bit more like upright, you have a better pedaling position, and the bike is like digging less into the travel. It's really good to climb like on technical trails up. So it's a different application to the Nude, like the one on the Nude 5T, on the classic Genius, is more like you have a complete lockout. And the first mode is also like acting on the hydraulic. And this one is like following the philosophy of the bike, like it's like more aggressive. You can still pedal up like really well with the firm mode and everything. And yeah, when you open everything, you have a super cool shock.
I mean, I think just that cutout of it is, it just shows the work that goes into designing these shocks these days. And
exactly, yeah.
You know, there's so many different little parts to it that make it feel so good. And
yeah, I love it. I mean, I don't know if you can catch everything on camera, but like there is like so many like small machine parts and everything.
Yeah.
You can really like understand like the price of the shock, kind of like the value of the shock.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks epic, man.
Yeah, and you could look at this for like hours, like
It's just, you're always just constantly noticing stuff, the bottom out spacers,
like
all the valves and just how they work. And
for example, you can notice like some really small drill like going from the first air chamber to the second one, so it's going like this.
Yeah.
And if you look closely into here, you have like really small holes like all around. I had this shock for quite a long time on my screen, and on the screen like everything is looking bigger, and you know I can zoom in and out quite easily.
Yep.
And the first time I received this one, I was like, wow, this is like really tiny actually. It's like really cool to look at.
All right, let's put these shocks down. We can talk about the links that make up the new Genius. In fact, I'll pass them straight to you.
You have left and right, so you can take the other one if you want to check.
Let's talk about these links, because again, we've just put the shock down, talking about you know, the engineering that's gone into it, but then you see these links, and again, there's a huge amount of engineering gone into them. The splines to make it all align, and just, I mean, they're lightweight as well. They're really, really light.
Again, like complete different construction from the Spark. Like we changed the construction quite a lot for like stiffness, bigger bearing, and the first thing you can see is like we went for like a straight spline, so you can spread the load like really efficiently when the suspension is moving like up and down. This allows us to put like much bigger bearing to handle like all the abuse, and once again to help with like stiffness and durability. What you can see is like the final product, but we spend like tons of hours on the FEA, so like computer simulation to optimize every shape as much as possible.
Yeah.
For like weight, stiffness, resistance, everything.
Talk to me a little bit about the finite element analysis process and how you use that software to actually design a bike and design these small parts as well.
So at Scotty, I have a complete team dedicated to it. So I'm not working on it. I mean, for sure I understand it. I need to work with them. We analyze the results together, and of course I have to modify the parts in the end. But yeah, we have a complete team dedicated only on this. Yes, I just like doing like simulation all day long about our request, and then we check if it's matching the targets we set, like the comfort, stiffness, weight targets, everything. From experience, I know it's like super realistic what they're doing, super predictable.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we try to push a bit the limit, and then we see a failure in the factory. Like almost all the time, it's matching exactly the simulation model they have. It's like pretty interesting.
I think like what a lot of people don't realize is that you see this finished end product of a bike, but you don't know all these little elements, all the little different teams, yourself, your team, the product engineers, the product designers, and then also, you know, you've got a whole team that are, they're just doing FEA to make sure that that bike is stiff, strong, and obviously be as light as possible.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, doing such a bike is like in between like 2 and 3 years for us of development, so it's quite a lot of work. And like many different people are working on such bike. Like.
So we've talked a lot about lightweight things. We've talked a lot about carbon. We've looked at the shock. We've looked at these links. Let's grab the alloy frame, which in itself is also, you know, it's absolutely stunning. That just the profile and the work and the engineering that's gone into that is incredible too. But you know, everyone just talks about that carbon bike. What's gone into designing and developing the alloy version of it? And I believe that you're one of the main people that worked on this bike.
Exactly, so. Yeah. It's kind of my baby. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, we wanted to keep like the same like integrated technology we had on the carbon model, so the frame is looking amazing to me. We use like carbon for like the high-end models. Then we have like hybrid with like carbon front triangle and aluminum, this aluminum rear end. And if you go down, you have like the full alloy bike frame. It's truly like an high-end aluminum frame. Like we design like every single part of this frame in-house, so we can optimize everything, and everything is working together to achieve the target we want, like comfort, pedaling stiffness, fork stiffness, head tube stiffness. Once again, I quite like this cut frame. I think there is a lot we can talk about. From like thickness optimization, I mean, you can really see, like if you look closely like to the tube, you can really see how the thickness is going from the critical area to like how it's going into the middle of the tube.
Yeah. So this is really the critical area. You know, when you've come to design the frame, this is a critical area here in terms of structural, and then as you go further up here, it gets a little bit thinner just to save weight.
Yeah, it's a bit simplified. It's not only about this area, but
of course.
Yeah, like as you can see everywhere where we have like connection with like welds, or we need strength for like the head tube, for example, and stuff like this, you can see like the thickness is increasing again. It's a lot of work to do something like this. You can see like all the thoughts we had about like cable routing to make sure like nothing is rubbing or like pulling. like all the construction, like compared to the previous generation, we tried to have like as many like closed surface as possible to be like closer to the look of the carbon. We had to design like completely new like forged part, like tubes and like all kind of different process. I've done a list on my laptop the other day, like we developed like more like 25 processes. And yeah, the goal was to keep like all the same feature as the carbon. So whether you go for like the ultimate top end or for like the 940, which is like our entry level model, you will benefit from like the exact same geometry, kinematic, all the same feature, all the same design.
I mean, it looks incredible. It's a lovely looking frame, whether you go for the carbon or the alloy. And you know, what we didn't get to see in the carbon frame was actually this link right here. And talk us through a little bit about how this suspension system works, because we've not really touched on that just yet, and it's such an easy way to see it right now and with everything on display.
I mean, you can grab the carbon if you want to, like, you have no shock inside, so if you want to move it up and down. It's like a 4-bar suspension design, same as the previous generation. I mean, as you can see, it's looking quite different. It's still the same principle, but it's in another way, let's say. We wanted to keep like the shock like integrated, but like as easy to access as possible. So you have a big opening at the bottom of the frame. You have quick access to like all the different knobs and tuning of like all the shock.
We've looked at the frames, we've gone through it all. Let's talk about the geometry of the bike.
So for this bike, we developed like a kind of like an intelligent application of like the longer slacker lower, of course. Compared to the previous generation, the bike is a bit longer. So I mean, I've done a lot of back-to-back testing. It's like way more comfortable to ride the bike. You feel way more like in the middle of the bike rather than on top of the bike. For the headset, you have like two different set of cups. So one with like 0 degree, which is like at 64.5 degree. And with the angle one, you can switch in between like 64 and 65 degree. Like, so you can really like tune the bike according to your usage of the bike.
So you can really get the bike tuned to suit you, between the shock, between the geometry, and then the other thing that's really cool about it is a little Sag indicator to get it dialed in. What went into making that happen?
Yeah, once again, like integration, like we took the experience we gained from the Spark and we push it like a notch further. We have like a smart device that can allow you to set your sag and see like how much travel do you use, like if you bottom out or not, if you use all the travel or not. Since like the shock is not visible anymore, we have to find an alternative to the classic O-ring. And yeah, I think like this is like super convenient. This is like taking into consideration the kinematic of the bike. So you no longer set the sag at the shock, you set it at the rear wheel. So it's taking into consideration like the leverage ratio.
Talk to me a little bit more about the attention to detail and that further integration into the frame. You know, I'm seeing a really nice chainstay protector, new chain guide, just helping add that element of sleekness to the frame. Yeah,
we spend a lot of time to push for like all those details. I think it's like the kind of stuff you expect when you buy like such a bike. So yeah, like we already talked about like the down tube cover. I have like the integrated chain guide in my hands. So that's something which is like new for this bike as well. So as you can see, like you can adjust like to the different like chain line and also like chain ring sizes. What's cool about this one is like you can just pop the outer part out. So if you want to remove your chain or remove your crankset or something like this, you can keep this one on the frame and don't mess up with the setting. It's like all the kind of small details we are trying to think during the development. I mean, we are riders, we are using the bikes, we are maintaining our bikes as well. So of course, it's like all the kind of stuff. Sometimes you're like, I would like to have this on my bike, and then we try to do it.
And then what else have we not touched on about the bike?
So I haven't talked about like the chain stay and like seat stay, like chain protector. A silent bike is a fast bike. I don't know if you agree, but
100%,
yes.
100%, I agree.
So we try to avoid like all the noises on the bike, starting from the chain. We design like those like rubber protection, like chain stay and seat stay on the rear triangle, like with a construction which is like inspired from the Gambler. So they're like way bigger than before, way thicker. We have like air pockets inside to dampen the sound. I mean, as you can see as well, we have a lot of ribs on the top, all for the same purpose, like to dampen the sound. They're getting like way over the edges as well to avoid like paint chips. I think this is something quite important as well.
I'm really excited to go out and ride it. I've not ridden the bike yet. I built it up yesterday. If someone picked up, you know, a model similar to this, what do you think their first ride experience would be like?
I mean, it's quite impressive to have a bike which is like pedaling like that great uphill, and like it's close to like ransom category on the way down. I have to say, like it's like really fast while staying like really playful. I mean, yeah, it's a cool one. You will see.
I'm excited. Well, let's get up and let's go for a ride. Thank
Cool.
you.
Cheers.
Right, we're in La Barra.
Exactly, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the bike park. What's here?
So we are in what we call the Pre-Alpes, so it's like just before like the big mountains we all know.
And what's the blue trail like?
So it's a bit in between a blue and a red, I think. It's a bit of everything, which is cool. You have some jumps, you have like some fast open section, some routes, some fast corner into the forest, so it's really great.
First run done. Initial impressions of the bike are great. However, I just want to dial in. I talked about balance a lot, so I'm going to add a little bit of pressure to the shock. Just going to pop that cover off. Super easy like that. Attach the shock pump. Also changed the angle of the saddle just so I could get my weight a little further over the bike. Feeling that I've made the front end a little too high, but that's something that we can swap out later. And I'm also going to add a volume spacer. It's just dropping through that front travel a little bit too much, but it's set at the right sag for me. So yeah, first impressions of the bike are really good. That first run, it just had loads of grip, it was tracking, it felt like it was just going straight over all the rough sections in a really nice way, and it just felt really controlled on it. So excited to see what these little small changes can make and help improve the overall performance and ride of it. So just realized as stock the fork comes with 1. I normally run 3 to 4, so I'm going to chuck in 3, run the same pressure, do a run, come back, reevaluate and see how we're getting on. Alright, so we've done a lap on the blue.
Yeah.
I've made some changes to my bike, added some volume spacers up front, put a little bit more air pressure in the rear, and after that second run on the blue, it's feeling really, really good. It's feeling dialed, it's feeling balanced, I've got loads of grip. Now we're headed up to do the red. What's the red like?
I mean, as you can see at the top, it's quite open, like really like bike park style with like a lot of berms and jump. Then we have like more jumps, bigger ones than on the blue. And then we will enter into the forest, and then it's going to be like really rough and fast. I love it.
I'll let you lead this one out. Sounds like it's your favorite trail, and I look forward to following the local. Tell that Etienne knows this track so well. Oh man, thank you.
You're welcome.
For not only telling us all about the new Genius, but also showing us the trails. If you've enjoyed this video, give that a thumb up like. If you've got comments, questions about the new Genius, leave them down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the trails. Beer time?
Yeah, that's right.
Non, il y a un autre